All right,
Yep.
we're in business. Okay.
Yay.
All right, we're going to get started, and then I'm sure others will join us. All right, welcome everyone. I'm so happy that you were able to join us tonight for this much anticipated presentation, The Ins and Outs of Writing and Publishing a Book. Please let us know who you are now that the chat feature has been enabled for all of you. Please let us know who you are, where you're joining us from, and what year did you graduate, if you're CNR or Mercy. And tonight, if you have any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A feature down below of your screen. Now I want to welcome our CNR alumni panelists. Tonight's moderator, joining us from Portugal, is Liliana Santizo. Many of you may remember her from our presentation last year, Navigating Your Path in a World That's Ever-Changing. Liliana is an entrepreneur currently operating her own business, designing flourishing lives and businesses. Our CNR alumni authors tonight are Patty O'Connell Pearson, middle grade nonfiction author of Fly Girls, the Daring American Women Pilots who helped win World War II. Noelle Caraccio, fiction, thriller, magical realism, author of Shattered City. Denise Sampson, children's book author of The Great Gray Day. And Mary Crescenzo, also nonfiction and how-to guide author of The Planet Alzheimer's Guide, 8 Ways the Arts Can Transform the Life of Your Loved One and Your Own. Now, I would like to turn this over to Rosa Puleo Napoleon, CNR class of 1975, and co-chair of the CNR Legacy Council.
Thank you, Tara. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th installment of the Sister Dorothy Ann Kelly Enrichment Series. Sister Dorothy Ann Kelly, OSU, was the president of CNR from 1972 to 1997. She was a visionary and leader and left her lasting mark on the entire CNR community. However, her impact was felt well beyond the College of New Rochelle, into the realms of higher education, women's rights, the Catholic Church at large, and the global community. On behalf of the CNR Legacy Council, I would like to thank you all for being here tonight to listen, to learn, and to share. Through sponsorship of this lifelong enrichment program that was kicked off in the fall of 2022, the College of New Rochelle's Legacy Council is striving to keep the spirit of CNR alive by paying tribute to the legacy of Sister Dorothy Ann Kelly. We're especially excited about this evening's program, which is centered on the ins and outs of writing and publishing a book, a topic that seems to have generated a great deal of interest. So without further delay, let's get started as I turn this over to our moderator, Liliana Santizo. Liliana?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Rosa. And thank you to our panelists today for joining. I am very excited to be here and be learning along with a few other participants that have joined us today. We're excited for everyone that's here. Please continue to put in the chat any of your name, location, and the year that you graduated. We want to make this conversation as engaging as possible. So we also want to encourage, and I'm going to just emphasize what Rosa said, for you to ask questions as our panelists today share their stories on how they've navigated the journey of being an author, publishing, and what is their creativity process. So I'm excited to be here with everyone. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Noelle. We're going to get started with our first session. Is we want to talk a little bit about, and I'm going to invite panelists to answer the questions, and they could tag each other, but we want to make this as much as a conversation. So the first question is, tell me a little bit about your journey with CNR, and how did that journey with CNR bring you to where you are now, and how has it inspired your writing career? And we can start off with Patty.
Okay, so I graduated from CNR in '72 with a degree in history and a minor in English. And I didn't intend to be a writer, but it was the late '60s, early '70s. I didn't have any idea what I intended to be. And I ended up teaching, and so that kind of took a lot of time. And I think the CNR influence, though, in terms of my writing, was the solid liberal arts education that I got there. So even though I wasn't majoring in journalism or writing or what have you, I was learning how to write. I was, being a history major, I was learning how to do very serious research and put that together and use that for something. And so I think it was those skills that just kept at it. So I was using them as a teacher. Of course, I taught high school history, and I was using those skills all the time. But then as a writer, they have served me very well, very well.
Thank you, Patty. Who wants to go next?
Well, I graduated from CNR in 1990. I went to college in New Rochelle with the hopes that I was going to be there not long, but I got in, and the teachers that I had made a major impact on me. I was so thrilled just to study psychology. That was my major. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I ended up doing 24 credits or 32, a minor in education. And I started off working in my Head Start program once I graduated. I used to sit and just make up stories in my class verbally, because sometimes the children would act out, and I found out when I would engage them with stories, putting their names in it, and they loved it. So one of the teachers I worked with, she said, "I don't know why you keep telling these stories and don't get them published." I had no idea what she was talking about getting published, but years later, many years later, I was told the same thing too. I had started writing them down during the pandemic. And as a result of that, I started to look into getting some of the stories published. And that's what I did. That's how I got started, with sitting home with stories starting to be written, and just looked into getting them published. That was my start.
Thank you, Denise.
I'm Mary Crescenzo. I live in Topanga, California, which is in Los Angeles County. And I had the opportunity to study art education as well as art therapy at the College of New Rochelle, with my graduate studies completed in 1976. College of New Rochelle was one of two schools in New York, the other was Pratt, that offered this very new and progressive program. And it so influenced me, not just as a teacher, because I taught for a while in public school, but when I moved into being a community artist, a cultural worker, an arts strategist and practitioner in community settings, there were all types of settings, all types of ages. And so the art therapy really helped me to work with people in certain conditions, certain situations, eventually with persons with dementia. And so the background and the foundation that I received was just so valuable to what I was going to do years later.
Thank you, Mary. Noelle?
Well, I was an English major at College of New Rochelle, and I was the recipient of a Danforth Fellowship for a PhD in English. The problem was, when I was graduating, there were no jobs. I could just look around and see, great, I'll have a PhD in English, but I will not have a job. So I decided to go to law school instead. But I can remember my senior year at CNR taking a poets drama course of writers of the 20th century with Dr. Vergara, and thinking, I could write those plays, I could do that. But then I went on to law school and things changed, but I always had this yearning to write. And about 10 years ago, a friend of mine said she wanted to write this book about what had happened with her mother. And when her mother died, she thinks the mother sent her a message, a friend actually, in this dog. So we collaborated on that first novel, and that's how I started writing. And then I since have done 4 more alone since then.
Thank you, Noel. College News Show has really helped us in our journeys, right? Not just as authors, but just in our personal journeys. And I am also very grateful for my education at CNR. Let's dive a little deeper and let's talk a little bit about your personal inspiration. Can one of you or who, and not just has to be one of you, but can someone share a personal professional experience that has inspired and shaped your creative process? So I want to dive into like your creative process as an author now. So outside of the College New Rochelle, what have been the experiences that have inspired and shaped your writing? Whoever wants to go, it's a
Well,
Well,
my,
I'm sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, please.
My book, The Great Great Day, was inspired by my granddaughter. I worked in Head Start for over 20 years. And my granddaughter attended the school when she turned 3. And it was so unbelievable because, you know, I would see children hitting her and I would talk to her, I said, you know, I would tell the child, I don't want you hitting her, but I didn't want to get so involved. So my other teacher would to take care of it because I was like sometimes very upset to see children hitting my granddaughter, and her telling me that, Grandma, you just got to talk to them. You have to understand them. And I just couldn't believe her personality because that was one of my son's daughters, and he was nothing like her when it comes to understanding how to be nice. And this young girl that was in the class, 3 years old too, they became so good as friends. And until this day, my granddaughter now is 24 years old, and she's getting married in January. And this same young lady is going to be, she's been her friend from 3 years old, and she's going to be her matron of honor in her wedding in January. And I was so, you know, when I wrote the book, I just, you know, like when we look at people today, and it was doing, like I said, my book was inspired through Black Lives Mattered. And I just couldn't believe that, you know, how 2 young ladies of different cultures, different backgrounds, saw something in each other, and they became friends in a 3-year-old class. And at 24 years old now, they're still friends. So that was my inspiration in writing this book. I wanted parents, when reading it to their children, to understand that it doesn't matter what your economic background is, your cultural background, your race. When you have something in common and become friends, that's what should matter, not what we have or don't have or what color we are. So my granddaughter was my inspiration behind my first book.
Thank you, Denise. Mary, you wanted to share?
Yes, thank you. Well, you also talked about the process. And for me, the process is the impetus with an idea and then crafting the material, the raw material. I did have a personal experience. It was a personal response to a professional setting that was very inspirational to me. As an arts practitioner, as I mentioned, I work with persons with dementia. When I first began this in the mid-90s, I would come home and drive home and be in tears because I just was in reaction to the remarkable work that the artwork that these people did, but also in response to the conditions that they were living in. So when I got home to process my reaction, I began to write persona poems in the voice of these people that I worked with. And these poems led to eventually a chapbook of poetry, and then a play, and then ultimately it also inspired my nonfiction book, The Planet Alzheimer's Guide, a book for caregivers or anyone who wants to learn how to interact, communicate, and connect with people with dementia. So that was an inspiration that developed from one genre to the other.
What I see is you write about what you know. Okay, I would bet that there's nobody on the panel that wrote a book about submarines, but you drew from some of the experiences you have. I had a client who told me that she had 2 daughters, one by each husband, and they didn't know who to name as the guardian for the kids. So they named the ex-husband and they named her brother-in-law as co-guardians. And I said to her, if you had been my client at the time, I would have fought you on that. So that was the inspiration for my third novel, The Stand in the Box, where we have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old whose parents are killed in a car crash, and they name an uncle on each side of the family who are not related by blood or marriage, and they become the co-guardians and all the problems that caused. But that was just like one conversation I had with a client. Fortunately, she's still alive. The husband is still alive and the girls are still alive. So they never had to use that will. But that's what gave me the idea.
Thank you, Noelle. And I'm curious of how many of our guests who have joined this conversation today are in the process of using an inspiration in their own lives to start this creative process. So if you are a listener today, you're a part of this conversation, if you want to just type in yes and type in Y or M for maybe, or U for unsure, that you are actually considering, or N for no. If you're considering writing a book, we'd love to see your engagement in the chat as well. Outside of your personal inspirations, which I think we all have inspirations in our lives, and we have, like you said, Noelle, experiences in our lives that we can write from, and we're getting a few responses, and so we do have a few folks that are saying yes. How did you initiate this project? What helped you start the process? What strategies did you use to overcome that initial challenge of starting a new writing project? Or did you start multiple times? Who would like to jump into? Patty, do you want to
Sure.
jump into that one?
Yeah, when I was thinking about writing and had just been doing a little bit of writing while I was still working and raising children and all that, I always kind of figured I'd write fiction for adults. That's what I read and that's what I thought I might write. But as I was teaching, what happened was that I had other teachers say to me, "You're so good at explaining things." And so I found really my voice was for that younger audience and explaining things. So when I start a project, the first book was about the women who flew military planes in the US during World War II. And when I started that, I'd never heard of them until I saw an obituary in the paper of a woman who lived in my area who had been one of those ladies. And so with each project, for me, I start with just reading and reading and reading about the event, the person, the people, the time period, the setting, the whole thing. Because I find that if you're going to tell a story, even though you're telling a true story, you're not making anything up, but you still have to write it like fiction in terms of pulling the reader into that world. And somebody described it to me, another writer described it to me as you have to be able to get up every morning and go down this wormhole into that universe. And so whether it's fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. You have to know that universe so thoroughly that when there's a knock on the door or the phone rings, it surprises you that you have to crawl back out of that hole and go back into today, into the real world. So it's the reading to get so familiar as I can with everything I'm going to be writing about before I ever write anything. And that's been really the way I've done all of them.
Thank you, Patty. Does anyone else want to talk about how they've overcame their first initial challenge in starting their writing projects? Or what was your experience? At what point did you say, okay, this is going to become more than just an idea in my head, or it's going to become more than just a piece of paper with some words?
I know when I started writing, my character was my granddaughter, but at the time the the nationality or ethnic group of the character wasn't who I actually finished the book off with. Like I said, during the time where everything was so up in rage about Black Lives Matter and all these protesting, I decided to change the ethnic group of my character. So, because my whole thing was I wanted to show that Blacks and whites can get along no matter what, and I wanted my character was going to be Latino and my granddaughter being African American. So I changed it where I can use the color gray. And, like I was saying in my class, I tell kids when you mix black and white together, you get the color gray. So that's where I got the title of my book from, The Great Gray Day, because of the two different ethnic groups. And I was like really satisfied with that because I wasn't sure what I was gonna say or do with the ethnic groups I had, which is my granddaughter's friend. And I think it worked out really well in the sense of when I read the books to the book to my children, I was able to make them see, even at 3 years old, like the difference and how it doesn't matter what color you are, long as you have something in common, you respect each other's, whatever it is, you respect each other, and you can become the best of friends. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted children to see that, they don't have to live the way adults live, choosing and picking who they wanted to be friends with. They can be friends with whoever they want. And so that was my inspiration to reach out to the children first. And I'm satisfied with it because I think that I accomplished what I wanted to in writing that book.
Thank you, Denise. Mary, I wanted to ask you, at what point did you realize that you were ready to commit to the writing process? Or was there a click? Or how does that process happen in your lives and your minds of converting this to a real writing project?
Well, for this book itself, this nonfiction book, it was stirring in my mind for a long time because spending all these years, decades of working with people and finding creative methods to connect and communicate with them through the arts, I felt I needed to share this with others. So I could do it in the rooms, but I wanted all caregivers to be able to know they could do this. And that was the inspiration to move ahead. And then it was during COVID where I said to myself, well, you're in your house all by yourself, you can't leave. This is the time, there's no excuse. If you want to share this with the world, you have to start writing it down. And I know that I'm wondering also, some writers out there think, well, that's the hardest thing, just to get started. How do I get, something on this blank page? And I think whether fiction, nonfiction, any form of writing, I like to call it wearing two hats. Just put the writer's hat on first and just put it down there. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can always go back later, look at it, and then put the editor hat and be a little more critical of it. But I think people start like, I gotta have this just right. No, that's only one of the layers of all of this. And when you make that commitment to say, I'm just going to put it out there, I can always make it better. That's a way to kind of tap yourself on the back and say, you can do this.
Thank you, Mary. Noelle, I wanted to go back to your story because you studied English literature and then you went into law. At what point and what clicked in you to just say, I just want to write a book. I don't want to leave that behind. Or is that something you always felt? Because it seems like it was a part of your educational journey.
Well, a lot of times people said to me, how could you possibly be an English major and go to law school? And my answer was, it's the most logical thing in the world. You read, you analyze, you're able to write something yourself about it. I always, I think, wanted to do it, but I was busy. But I do want to make one really good point here that was told to me, One of my publishers said, in the writing industry, the publishers talk about the authors as two kinds. They call them the pantsers and the plotters. And the plotters are the ones who have an entire outline of what's going to happen in the book, chapter by chapter by chapter. And the pantsers are the ones that write by the seat of their pants. And if you had asked me which I was based on writing affidavits and briefs and contracts, I would have said a plotter. However, we wrote the first novel with no outline, with nothing. I swore we would never do that again, and yet I have written 4 more novels with no outline whatsoever. You know, so I say that when you start to write, the characters start to tell you what to do.
I love that. And I think that that's one of the things we talked about previously. It's like everyone has a different experience with this journey, but that's what we wanted to showcase everyone on our call today, right? That it's a creative journey. So everyone's journey can look a little different. And I love the ability to celebrate how everyone's journey has still led them to being able to publish a book. And so I want to ask Patty, I want to go into a little bit more about the discipline part of it, right? So we talked about all the great ideas, we talked about your inspirations, you talked about the contribution that CNR had and your own experiences with the world. But so now let's talk more like the strategy part, right? Because an idea is fun until it's not. So how did you get through that part of like the not so fun part of writing and putting together a strategy to make sure you complete this? How did you stay focused?
So when I'm working on a nonfiction, so I do a ton of reading and documentaries and whatever's out there that I can find, and that informs me as I go. I'm thinking about, so I have this kernel of an idea, you know, the women who flew military planes during World War II. But what is the book really about? What is it really about? And so that's, once I get hold of that, then it kind of begins to fall into place. So the third book I did is called Conspiracy, and it's about Watergate. And that one I kept reading and reading and reading. I was addicted to all these memoirs everybody from then wrote. And as I did it, it came to me largely through a documentary. I saw that what this book was really about wasn't the criminals and the crimes. It was really about the people who defended the Constitution and about the Constitution itself. And once that was in my head, I couldn't wait to get up every day and keep writing. I mean, because I wanted very much to explain chunks of the Constitution along the sidelines as I'm telling this story, and who these heroes were who defended the Constitution. And so it becomes, I don't feel necessarily that it requires discipline once you get going. It's like you can't wait to get started the next day and pick up where you left off, because, you know, it's exciting. So for me, that's, you know, yes, there are plotting parts of it that are not fun. I'm not going to say it's all fun by any means, but I try to simply treat it as for me, part-time job, because it is. I do find deadlines are handy. They're very useful to say it has to be done.
That's good. I think that's a very good deadlines. It's a really good strategic tip for folks that are.
Well, I count them from my editor. So they say it has to be there. The contract says it has to be done by July 1st. What are you going to do? It has to be done by July 1st.
Yeah, thank you. And I wonder how many, again, just how many of our attendees today are kind of stuck in that place of, you know, they have an idea and now they're trying to really find the momentum. And I like what you said, the whole, if it excites you, you know, that's a good sign. That's definitely a good sign. Are there any other tips that anyone else wants to contribute, or habits that helped you maintain the momentum as you were starting to write? Let's start off like your first book, right? And I'm curious on, did your practices change after you wrote your first book? Was there any shift in your writing practices? So I'm not sure if Noelle, anyone else wants to chime in on that response to that question?
Well, I have a second book out. It's called Me, Cleo, and Mindy. And it's a children's book also. And like what I've done, where I have been inspired by something like this book, the second one, Me, Cleo, and Mindy, it's a giraffe and a elephant. So what happened was my inspiration and keeping what I really wanted to do as far as like empowering children, no matter what they were. So instead of using my two grandsons to compare, because they like to play basketball, and one was tall, one was short and heavy. I was scared that my grandson, who was kind of heavy, wouldn't be able to play basketball, and he loved it. So instead I was going to use the two brothers to do that, my two grandsons. And my daughter told me, I think that would be kind of bad because you might make them feel bad in the book. So I used a giraffe and an elephant, making the giraffe really short and the elephant really tall. And they became friends in the jungle. And as a result, the other animals in the jungle would laugh at them and whatever. And that was my goal, to show in the book that don't matter how tall or how short you are, you would find someone who has something in common with you. And that was in the jungle with the giraffe and the elephant. So I was glad that I listened, and I didn't use my grandsons to make him feel bad, because now at his age, he's much taller than the other one. And he this year he went to Germany to for the Teenage Olympics, and he played basketball there, for USA. So I was really glad that I took advice and used animals in order to get the point across that you can be short and you can be tall and you can still do whatever your desires are, as long as you have somebody to be there to cheer you on. And so a lot of my books that I have and getting ready to write, have written, is more about building up children, regardless of what their handicaps or whatever might be.
Thank you, Denise. Does anyone else want to share a tip or any shift? Sorry, not shifts, mindsets, or habits
I would
that
like
have
to
helped
comment
you?
on something that Patty had mentioned, which I totally agree, finding out what is this really about. And one, in regard to that and related to that, one good way to stay on point, stay on topic, stay on the energy is to write down in a sentence, what is this book about? If somebody saw you, it's like an elevator speech. If someone said to you, what is this book about? You should be able to say what it's about. And from that as a framework, when it starts getting in the middle, like the beginning is exciting, the end's exciting, writing the middle is like, oh boy, just ask yourself, what is this about? And that'll keep you, I believe, on track. In film, it's called a log line. It's just one thing that you could tell me, you that are listening, the attendees, ask yourself, what is my book about? Whether you've written it halfway or not, and keep that in mind to keep you on track.
I have
Thank you.
found that sometimes you're going along great. You've got an idea and it blossoms and it goes well. And then you sort of, I find I sometimes reach a stopping point. And at the beginning, I used to try to force it and say, no, I got to keep going. No, I think you have to let it go, kind of let it percolate. I mean, not indefinitely for 10 years, but you got to let it percolate a little bit in your brain. And sometimes in the book Stand in the Box, I really didn't know how the book was going to end. There were several combinations of what was going to happen to the little girls and who was going to end up as the guardians. And was it going to be the original two uncles, one of the uncles, one of the aunts? I really didn't know. Then the other thing I find too is I have no title for the book, probably until I'm about 80% of the way through the book, and a bell goes off in my head.
It's good feedback. Thank you, Noel.
I
It's
think
very
the,
helpful.
to add to what Noel just said, the percolating is so important because you start with a great idea and it's so easy to get stuck. You know, you get the beginning, you know where it's going to go and you're eager for it to go there. And then somehow or another, it's just not working. And you can't force it. There are people who are very disciplined and they write 1,000 words a day or 500 words a day or something like that.
Oh,
I
no.
write until I'm being sloppy or it's difficult, it's awkward, it's ugly. And then I stop because it's not going to be any good. And I go off, and that's when I go off and do, you know, around the house or go for a walk or whatever. But when I'm doing those other things, something around the house, the yard work, go for a walk, go to exercise class, it's percolating. And you come away from that with a solution to whatever it was. And you can keep going the next day from there.
Sometimes I have had this work, and I've heard other people agree with this. Sometimes if you think about the problem, I used to do this when I was writing papers in school, but if you think about it right before you go to bed, while you're sleeping, that inner mind is working, and sometimes you wake up and you say, oh, now I know.
Yeah.
True.
That's helpful. That's very helpful.
We have very smart inner minds.
Are you all currently practicing your writing full-time, part-time? Is that even is there a creative time for writers?
Writers are artists, and artists don't have a time clock.
That's what I was hoping to hear.
As far as I know, for myself, yeah. So, but if you're percolating, you're still writing in your head. It doesn't stop. It's not even, for me, it's not even a choice. It's just a given. It's got to do this. I have other things that I do in my life. I am full-time as a writer, but I'm also a playwright and a singer, and so I work those in. But writing, it's who I am. It's one of the things that I am. And my first poem that was published, I put it in a pseudonym because I couldn't say to myself, this is you, Mary Crescenzo. And it was published, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, say who you are. Sometimes you have to reach that point, like, yes, I'm a writer, no matter what, how many books I published or not. This is what my heart does.
Would you say that writing chose you?
The arts chose me, yes.
The arts chose you.
And I'm happy to share what I know, and I have a responsibility to share what I do.
Yeah, and I love that we're taking the time to really honor the artist within all of you, right? Because there's so much creativity, discipline, and time that has gone into your stories. And I know folks are eager to talk about publishing and how to publish. I've seen your questions, I'm seeing your comments, but I do want to honor the craft, the discipline, right? Because it's such a beautiful process. As somebody who loves to read, who loves books, who would love to write a book, I don't know about what, but something, you know, it's just such a privilege to be amongst you who have already pursued that part of your dream. Before we move into publishing, I wanted to talk a little bit about your kind of like what's the day like? If you had to put the day of a writer, how would you describe your day as a writer? Does anyone want to? And you can fantasize a little. You can get a little creative on me.
I still work full-time. I have 3K. I'm in East Harlem in New York, so I still teach. So a lot of times I write when I'm on vacation, during the Christmas holidays, you know, when I have time, just, or like someone said, your mind is always going. So if I'm sitting somewhere and something comes up, I'll just write. So I really don't have any time frame as to, because I'm working. And then I do Girl Scouts also. I'm a Girl Scout troop leader. So between the two, I have to write when I'm on vacations and just have time off from the work, from my job. So
And
that's
I'm
I
curious,
I can
do
identify
you
with that.
use,
I'm sorry.
do you
Leah, go ahead.
use, no, I'm sorry. Do you use, what do you all use? Are you writing with pens? Or are you, are you typing?
No, I write. I don't type.
I
Okay,
type,
that's what
I use a laptop and then, but periodically I have to print out what I've been writing and then use a pencil to do the revision a lot of times. I like going through it.
Okay,
You know, that's maybe the history teacher in me correcting research papers or something, but that's how I like to revise in handwriting.
Same for
Okay.
me, Patty. Same for me.
what about you, Noel?
Well, let me just go back. I was agreeing with Denise.
Okay,
I'm still practicing law full time. And, you know, I pray that we're going to have some, as much as I love to play golf, I pray we're going to get some cold Saturdays and Sunday mornings, because then I get up and I have a few hours where I can really devote a few definite hours to it. Sometimes, you know, at the end of the day, I'll write a couple of pages. For me, it's all, and I'm not that computer literate, but it's all on the laptop. So you can go back and make the revisions, and you can go back and look. And I also have found if it sometimes it takes a while to write a book. It doesn't happen in a month. My suggestion too is, however you want to keep notes, whether you want to keep them in a notebook or you want to keep them on the computer, but I actually force myself to write a synopsis of each chapter when it's done, so that if there's a time lag, you can go back and look and make sure you're not saying something that contradicts what you already said.
Mm,
And you can go back and look at it. It took me, one of the books, Secrets and Revenge, took me 1.5 years to write. So, you know, it takes a while. And again, you sometimes forget what you said, and you have to be careful that you're not contradicting later on what you said early on.
I do
Thank-
that with, I know a lot of people use a spreadsheet, but I hate spreadsheets. So I use just a chart, chapter by chapter, as to how many words it is. I pay a lot of attention to what grade level it is because I'm writing for kids. So I do the reading assessment as to what grade level it is, which you can do in Word. There's when
Yeah,
you
yes.
spell check, you can also add in what grade level is.
Oh,
Very important. And I'll go back and do that paragraph by paragraph if it's over what I want it to be. And then I also keep track of, like, if I notice that I'm using a phrase too often, I'll start keeping track. How often did I use that phrase? How often did I do this? So it's this big chart that I keep once the writing is going along. And I do that chapter by chapter and go back to make sure it's all flowing, because with nonfiction, it can take 2 to 3 years to write a book, because you have to do, you know, like 1 year's worth of research before you start. So
that's great. And thanks for the tips. I think the practical tips of Word are helpful to anyone that's like listening or watching. Okay, my last, and then we'll jump into publishing, is how long did it take you to write your books? I'm just curious. Or which is the longest, because some of you have written more than one book. So what book took you the longest time? And how much time was that?
Well, the first two to me didn't take long because I was home during COVID. So I was just writing and writing and writing. But I do have one that I just can't, I can't finish it. I can't get it to read the way I want it. And so I've written 2 or 3 more prior to the one that I just can't finish. So when I don't have anything else to do, I hopefully will be able to finish that one. So it wasn't, the first 2 wasn't bad. because like I said, I was home, so I had nothing else to do. So it was fun doing them. But this one, I just can't, I can't finish it. I just go around in circles. So it may get published and it may not. I don't know.
Thank you,
I'd say
Denise.
that I would say mine, I have 4, and there's a 5th one that seems to be never going to be published, but it's not at my end, it's at the publisher's end. But it's about 1.5 years, and then you're not finished, because when it goes to the publisher, then it comes back to you. So you might not be there in front of you for months, but then it comes back and you do more with it, and then it goes back to them, but then it comes back again and you do more with it. And so you have these big chunks of time when you might be working on the next thing you're doing. So it's hard you'd have to add all that up, but I would say about 1.5 years of solid on that one project. And then before it goes into that, waiting for it to come back mode.
And I like, Patty, that you shared that, because I think it's also a good segue into our conversation on publishing. But before we do, Noelle, Mary, did you want to share your length, timing?
Well, the book that was published, the nonfiction, was about 1.5 years because, again, COVID, that's what I was doing during that time, which was great. But I have a suspense novel that I'm still working on, and that book has been there for years, and I've been changing, and then I left it for a little while. So it just depends. I don't know what, I don't know fiction or nonfiction, if there's a rule that this fiction is, one of them is quicker than the other. I don't think that's the case. It's just how much time you have, and then how it moves. And then the editing process over and over and over.
See, I would say somewhere the writing part, it's somewhere between 1 year and 1.5 years. But again, I'm not doing it full time. I'm doing it because I'm practicing law. But I would say you also have to keep in mind that any of the publishers I have do not want anything really over. They don't want over 100 for sure, 100,000 words, and they really want to keep it, I would say, under 90,000.
Okay. All right. And thank you, Noelle, because let's jump into publishing. I know that a lot of people have questions on this. And I like that we already started talking about how there's the part of writing and then there's the part of rewriting sometimes because of your publisher. So can someone share, how did you transition from writing a book? How do you then go from there to getting a publisher? Did you do research on a publisher? What was your strategy to navigate the publishing component? And I know that that's a pretty loaded question. So let's maybe start with the first phase of how did you transition from, okay, I wrote a book and now I want to get it published. And I know that on our panel today, we do have, I believe it was Mary, you self-published, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have 2 different examples for folks that are asking questions about publishers. We'll have a self-publishing example, and then we'll have others examples of their publishing journeys. So the very anticipated section from all our questions, what strategies were effective as you were navigating publishing a book, choosing a publisher? Because yes, I don't have even a clue of where to start from there. So who wants to start this conversation? It sounds like, Patty, you look a little
Well, I was
interested.
thinking about it. This is going to sound terrible, but I mean it. Luck is your best friend, because there are excellent writers who are never going to get published. It's incredibly competitive, but beyond that, it's not just that you have to be the best one of whatever it is you're doing. You have to be in the right place at the right time and all that. But what I would say about the luck is that you have to create a strong possibility of having that good luck. You have to put yourself in the right place at the right time. And so what happened with me was I'd always wanted to write. I had actually done some writing that wasn't published. I couldn't find, a publisher, etc. And so when I was getting ready to retire, I went back to school and got a Master of Fine Arts in writing for young people at Lesley University in Cambridge. And it was one of these low residencies. So you go for a week, you meet with people, you get your cohort, et cetera, and you go home with a semester's worth of stuff to do, and then you go back again. And what that did for me was that my thesis advisor there publishes with Simon & Schuster. And his editor had an assistant editor who was about to become a full editor, and of course did not have a client list. And he said to her, I have a student and I think you would like what she writes. That's how I did it. And so she and I emailed back and forth, and I sent her descriptions of what I had worked on, et cetera, et cetera. And I volunteered with Park Service in Washington, D.C. at the MLK and FDR memorials. And I was at the FDR memorial one day in the World War II room of that memorial, and there were no visitors around at that moment. And I felt my phone buzz, and I pick it up, and it's a text saying, "We'd like to offer you a contract on Fly Girls." And it's just me and FDR. And so that going to get that MFA, obviously it was a way to improve my writing, but it was also a way to network in that world. And I don't think I would be published otherwise. And that led to the second book, which I actually had worked on while I was at Lesley. And then my editor suggested the third one. And then the fourth one came along, and now I'm on the fifth one, and it's all with Simon & Schuster. And it's because I did that, and that mentor, that thesis advisor, put that door open a little bit.
I have
I just
both-
want to,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no,
I
I just
say
want
I
to
have both experiences of self-publishing and using a publisher. And the self-publishing it's brutal. It's very hard, and we did the first one through, I forget what, Kindle or whatever it's called. And you get some editor, you don't know who it is. You don't know how good they are. You don't know whether the suggestions they're making are good. So we found that very disappointing.
Are you saying, Noelle, that when you went through Kindle, they gave you an editor?
Somebody read the book and made suggestions. Yes,
Through
definitely.
Kindle? Oh, how long ago was that?
Probably 10 years ago.
It's very different now, and it's still difficult. But
Yeah.
that now that nobody does anything for you there except, well, I'll tell you later about that.
No, but I mean, that's so we were not going to do that again, and then so I went to a small publishing house for the second book for Shattered City that's no longer in existence. And then the 3 and 4, they're publishers. There's Black Rose and She Writes Sparks Press, but you have to go through, we were talking about this in the practice session. You have to go through their acquisition committee, and they don't necessarily take everything. And even if they do take it, they may want it heavily edited, which can cost you some, serious dollars.
I have a follow-up question for Pat and for Noelle real quick. So Patty, you said that you wanted to publish before, but when you say wanted, was it just a desire, or did you actually do anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had written a historical fiction novel, and didn't really. did the research with there used to be this big catalog. It's online now, I'm sure, about agents and editors and publishers.
Okay.
You get all that information, and you could find the blurb as to what a particular editor at a particular publishing house accepted, what kinds of things they're looking for, all that kind of stuff. And you send out query letters and more query letters.
Okay.
And maybe they say, yes, send it. And then they say, we don't want it, rarely with an explanation. a lot of writers consider it success when they get a rejection that has an explanation with it. That's considered success. And so I did all that. But what I would encourage people to do is to join serious organizations. I belong to the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and I have for 20 years or so, because they give you opportunities through their conferences to meet with agents and editors. And usually if you go to those conferences, and a lot of them are online now, but if you're a participant in the conference, they'll give you 6 months when you can submit something without an agent. Most publishing houses want agent work only, the big publishers that we all know about. And so those groups are incredibly important to network, to meet people in the field, to meet people in the business. I got an agent by going to one of those conferences, the Washington Independent Writers Conference. And you could sign up for it was like speed dating with an agent. You sign up for 5 minutes with an agent. And I did. And I already had the 2 books. I had Fly Girls and Fighting for the Forest were already out. So I took them with me so she could see them as I talked in my 3 minutes of talking really fast. And she's my agent now. So doing those things, getting out there with other writers who are published is huge because,
That's helpful. I'm gonna just follow up with Noel and then we can move to Denise and Mary to share their journey. But Noel, also kind of the same question. When you said I went to a publisher, can you break down what does that process look like logistically?
Well, I'm going to say that I'm very impressed with Patty with how organized and definitive. No, because when we met earlier, like a couple weeks ago to talk about this, and Patty was talking about how much research she does and how thorough she is, and I'm probably not in this area. I'm probably not. I mean, I told the story of in Shattered City, a dirty bomb goes off in New York City, and the problem is, are the main characters, are they going to work together? Are they going to survive? And so the publisher said to me, did you do a lot of research? Because part of it was there was a scrubbing agent that was going to get rid of the radiation. She said, did you do a lot of research about the scrubbing agent? And I said to her, no, I made it up. So
but you're writing fiction.
I'm writing fiction.
It's nonfiction. I don't want to get caught.
It has to be plausible. That's all it has to be is a plausible explanation. So Patty, I'm in awe of you with your research and all that. I'm at the other end of the spectrum on this. You have to go to these publishers, you submit the manuscript, they'll tell you what they want you to do. It has to go through the acquisition committee. That's my experience. And I was lucky because I got them to accept it on the first try for the 3 of them.
That's
awesome.
Huge. That's huge.
Yeah, congrats. It's a great feedback.
And you
Mary or Denise? Mary, you want to go first? Yeah.
I want to comment that it's 2 different ways to submit. If you're writing a novel, you're going to submit maybe a first chapter, or sometimes they'll accept, tell me if I'm wrong, Nicole, the whole book, a synopsis. When you're writing nonfiction, they don't want you often to write the whole thing. They want you to give them your idea and then go from there. But I'm happy to tell my journey as well. So after being published in multiple genre, poetry, fiction, children's, everything that you could think of except technical writing, in literary and commercial markets, in magazines and anthologies, and I still was not able to find the right agent or publisher to take my manuscripts into the world of traditional publishing. I had one person who was very interested in a young adult thing that I wrote. And next thing I know, I don't hear from her. And I find out that she moved, she went to another house. Well, that was the end of that. So the crazy things happen, even if someone has something in their hands, but of course, with luck and with your hard work, it can go to that direction. So, as I said, I wrote this during COVID, and I decided to try something different. I talked to people that had done self-publishing, and so I thought, well, I'm going to give this a try. So I wasn't interested in a vanity press. And what that is when you pay a lot of money to some group that just takes your work and just, no matter what it looks like, how many mistakes, you just pay them and they put it in print. That was not of interest to me. So I had decided to go through Amazon's division, and this was just in 2022. It is quite different than when they started with Kindle way back when. And it's called KDP Publishing, where you can directly self-publish a hard copy, a paperback, an ebook, with access to sell your book through Amazon worldwide. You set the price for the book, and they take a percentage, and that depends on various things. And that sounds simple, right? But it's complicated, or it can be, because you have to write it, you have to edit it, unless you pay for an editor to edit it, which I did not do because I've been writing and teaching writing throughout my life. But, and of course I had other people read it, and I just didn't send it out there like that. I had other writer friends read it for criticism, not just to tell me it's great. I want to know. I had my husband read it. And so I had to do that. I had to edit it. Also, you have to physically input it through KDP's word processing format. Well, if I had to do that, I would have thrown the computer out the window. But my husband used to be in word processing, besides the fact that he's a composer and musician. And God bless him, he put it all in for me. Otherwise, that wasn't going to happen. So you have to design the cover. I designed it. I did pay someone who's a friend to, tweak it a little bit. I'm also a visual artist, so that helped. Then you have to establish a sales page, a bio, and there it is. There's your book. And now you have to promote it. Just like when you have a publisher, many years ago, they would do all the promotion for you. Even then, even now, you have to get out there and do that. So, and if you hire someone to do all those things I just mentioned, it's going to cost you a lot of money. For me, I did it all myself, except for the input. But there are many, I will say, seemingly objective articles that include the pros and cons of self-publishing online. I just want to tell you that when you read those articles, be sure they're not trying to sell you something. They really need to be careful when you read through how this process works, and ask people who you know who've been published self-publishing through Amazon, and there are other sources too. It takes a lot of research to figure out what it takes to do this, and it is a different journey. But I don't know. I start submitting again to traditional way, but I just had to get a book. I said, before I die, I have to get a book. And this was the one that I did. There are several of them sitting there, and whether I choose self-publishing or not, I accomplished that. But it's not an easy task to take that direction, and do not go with a vanity press. That's my advice.
The other thing I wanted to say too, just excuse me 1 second. I through one of the publishers, we did a seminar, and one of the people said, and this is realistic, don't think that you're going to empty your bank account and hit a home run, or don't think you're going to put a second mortgage on your house to help the book get published, because the odds are against you. So you have to be careful that you're not, expending your life savings because this is going to be the great American novel. There's a lot of great American novels out there, and it's tough going. And I don't mean to be down about this, but we're trying to be realistic of what we tell you.
And I think that applies to going through the traditional way or going through this way, because there's so many people out there, and even when you get published, you have to help promote it. And if you're doing this for the money, then don't do it. Stephen King wrote, and he got 30 or so rejections in the beginning. He's still writing. Does he have to write? No, not anymore, if he did it for the money. So don't do it for the money. Do it because you have something to say, and just move forward with that and see what happens. So yes, Noelle, that is a fact, and it's important to share that it's not an easy task either way, but you should do it anyway and try, but don't put your whole life savings into it as well.
Thanks, Mary. And I'm gonna let Denise, just real quick, Denise,
Okay,
someone
okay.
asked on the chat, they asked, and I don't know if you can answer this, Mary, but they asked if they were told that Amazon assigns the ISBN to the book and that they take ownership. Was that your experience?
That does depend. I can sell my books on my own. I can speak and sell my books, but they do have the rights to the book. They don't have the publishing rights. They don't own the work. The ISBN goes through them. Now, you don't have to do it that way. I did it that way, but there are other sources, other ways to do it. You can pay for an ISBN, and then there's limitations. It is complicated, but yes, I can sell my book on my own. I can't put it in Barnes and Noble. They don't want a book from Amazon. But for me, I'm a speaker, public speaker on this topic. I give workshops for caregivers in creative writing as self-care. So I'm out there in the field where I can bring my books and sell them. If it's something where it's fiction and there's not that connection out there to a real world event or circumstance, then you probably might not want to do that.
Can I just say also, just to what you're saying, we had a problem with Amazon because we were approached by another company and said, we'd like to try to help you market the book. They owned the cover. They wouldn't give us the cover design. We offered to pay them for the cover design. They wouldn't let us have it. So we had to go get another cover design, which we didn't like as much for the first book of Secrets Change Everything. So you do have to be very careful.
Very true. You can make a new cover for yourself. They don't own the use of it for anything else. But for that book published through them, if you go with someone else for another reason through a means, which you can do, you can't use that cover.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to make sure Denise has some time. Denise, can you share a little bit about
I want to show you the cover of my book here. How I did was I went online and researched different publishers, and I would call. Some of them didn't take children's books. They weren't interested in children's books. So what I did was the last one I called was Fulton Books publisher, and they took my book. My transcripts. They took it, and I really enjoyed working with them. They whatever the cover they designed, and they would send it to me first for me to approve it. Everything that that I submitted to them, they sent back to me to approve. If I didn't approve it or I wanted changes, they changed it. So in my second book, it was done through Fulton Books Publishing too. The only problem I see is, like someone was saying, that they did a trailer for me. They did, they put my books on Amazon and in Barnes and Nobles, but only purchasing online. So, and then, so the thing is, it was money. It was money. But what I did like about them too was they made a payment plan. So it wasn't hard for me to pay what they was asking. The only setback is that when you look, you can't find like how many books you sold. And then they supposed to send you royalties, and you figure my book been out, I think the first one 2 years already, if not better. And I've only received $400 in royalties from publishing, Fulton. But, I have been on in pop-up shops and did things like that. But I'm writing books because I really enjoy getting the message out to children. That's why I'm still working, because I know I can't afford to stay home and try to write books and think I'm going to become rich or whatever. But I do have a dream that one of my books will maybe become a movie for children. I had submitted some stuff to Oprah, was hoping that she would take on, but yeah, I ain't getting no response. But but that's my dream, that one day it would be, one of my books would be in the form of a movie. So my thing is, if anybody that's online, and they're willing to do a payment plan and work with Fulton, I'm very satisfied with their illustrations and everything else that they have for me.
I have a quick question for Denise, if I may.
Okay.
Denise,
Yeah.
are you saying that at the end of the year, they don't send you a list of how many books were sold? Because you have to think about taxes in regard to that.
No,
And they should be sending you, I think,
I
like
get
all
I
of
get a
that
form
information.
from them, but like I said, I have only received $400 in the years that I had that book out on.
But
That's
you
it.
do know how many books you sold.
No,
Oh,
no.
Well, isn't the royalties based on how many books you sold?
That's what I thought. Well, that's what they told me in the contract too, that is based on what I sold. But when I call to find out, nobody has an answer far as me, how many I've sold.
I'm not,
Put the demand in writing to them. Make them
Okay.
answer you in writing.
Okay,
yes,
The
yes.
attorney has spoken.
Yeah.
I'll do that. I'll do
Very
that.
quickly, I'm not defending Amazon as the be all end all. I had specific reasons why I chose to work with that, but they do send me, every time a book is sold, they send me a notice, and I know how much I got, how much they get. At the end of the year, they send me a printout, and I have to take that into when I do my taxes,
Right,
as small as it may be one year and large as it may be another.
right.
So I agree with the attorney who knows what she's
Okay.
talking about.
I definitely
Mm.
will. I definitely will.
No, because
Thank you.
that's, I mean, that's income to you, whether it's a little or a lot. You
Yeah,
have to report it.
right.
But it sounds like a little bit of bait and switch if they're not willing to tell you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll definitely do that. And I have my daughter, she's an attorney also, so I will
Let her
ask
do it. Let
Yeah,
her do it on her letterhead.
yeah. I will.
Mine,
On her letterhead.
with the traditional publisher, so I publish with Simon and Schuster, and they have the author portal, which I hardly ever have gone into, but I get a
Yeah.
statement every 6 months. Now I don't get royalty. Contractually, I get royalties, but I get an advance. And so until you have made that much money, you don't get royalties. You only get royalties after they've gotten their
Okay.
advance back, so to speak. If the book never sells, I don't owe them anything. I don't have to pay back the royalty, the advance, but I get an advance. So consequently, because my market is primarily schools and libraries for the children's nonfiction. And so, and those don't show up in the portal the way other books do. So it's very complicated to try to figure out how many books you sold. I have no idea. I get royalties on the one that Scholastic bought for one of their book clubs. The others I've never made royalties on, but I made the advances, which you could not live on, but I get the advance. So, but I don't do it.
You are a unicorn. You are a unicorn among unicorns who gets an advance. I mean, we should all be bowing down. That's that's terrific.
But you don't, I said, you can't, children's nonfiction, it would be really remarkable to make your living at it. And so what most children's writers, particularly nonfiction, the way those who are actually living on writing full time, I'm retired, so, I'm doing this because I want to, but they're making their actual money on school visits and that kind of thing. They make, that's where they make money, not on the selling of the books.
May I make a quick?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Just a quick statement.
Sure. We're almost wrapping up.
Denise.
Go ahead, Mary.
Denise, you are one of the lucky people and fortunate people who have books already published. Now, if you have new books, you can use that as leverage. You can
Yeah.
write query letters to children's book authors, to children's book publishers, and you can find those in right, the Society of Children's Book Writers is a great place for you to connect with. And now you can send a query and say, I have these 2 books published, and this is a third manuscript. The fact that you have some experience done, that's a real help, wouldn't you say, Patty? For her
Oh,
to
yeah,
get the
absolutely.
attention of an actual
Mhm.
publisher in the traditional world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I love
And I
this.
would say the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, great organization.
Okay.
That's amazing. A supportive environment. That's what I love. We're here to lift each other up. And believe it or not, we are 10 minutes away from our time to finish. So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you all to give one piece of advice to anyone who is either aspiring to be an author, who has already started, who's already published, who's thinking of publishing, just to share a piece of wisdom based on your own experience before we wrap up this evening. Who wants to start?
I would like to say, whichever direction you choose for this journey, whether you submit queries to traditional publishing houses, whether you go with something like Amazon or BookBaby or other publishers who self-publish, do your research as to what this journey entails. What you have to do, try to find the pros and cons of this and see if that type of direction is something that fits your temperament, your time, your experience. But at the same time, don't give up, just write. And if it turns out that you never get anybody to quote unquote publish this, just the fact that you wrote it is technically, according to the Copyright Office and the Library of Congress, it's published. And so take it and leave it for a legacy for your family, because it's important to you and it may be important to them.
Thank you, Mary.
I would like to say, be brave. Be brave, okay? You know, you had asked us, Liliana, to give us one interesting fact. And when I thought about it, because I love to play golf, and I played in the club championship, and I won the club championship and was the runner-up. And you're putting yourself out there. And that's the same connection as when you write. You're putting yourself out there. And there are a million people who will tell you that they want to write a book, they are going to write a book, and they never type 10 words. So if you're brave and you follow through and do it, you're to be commended for that. Okay, that's, now you may get some criticism. The first time somebody wrote something bad about one of my books, I wanted to go hunt her down and kill her. Okay, but you're going to get some criticism, and that's okay too. Your whole life is not, surrounded by what other people think of you. But I think it's a brave journey to put yourself out there, and I wouldn't be discouraged by the fact that publishing is hard or marketing is hard. Writing is hard too, but you got to take that first step, and I would encourage people to do it.
Don't take rejection personally. Make it the best you can be, but you just can't, those rejection slips, you just put it aside and keep going.
I'm still looking to hunt down that person, Mary. I'm still looking for her. I'm going to hunt her down.
There's your next book.
And I would agree with everyone that, as an author myself, writing children's books and teaching, if you're out to make money, then, you could forget it, because just my experience with trying to get parents to buy books, they rather spend money on sneakers and all other stuff to make their children look well. And, and they won't buy a book. You know, I had a parent ask me, well, how much is the book? And when I told her, she said, oh, that's too much. And her son had on like $100 and something pair of sneakers. So I'm saying so I've taken in my heart that I'm reaching out to a certain group, and that's children, and to make them to build self-confidence. And if I never make a penny, hopefully that I've changed some confidence and build something up in a child, that when they get older, they could say, I read this book as a child, and this is why I am who I am today. So that's just my goal right now.
Thank
I
you,
would agree with
Denise.
that there has to be a reason that you're writing. Have a reason for it. And that, which goes back to that, what is this book really about? What is the reader going to get from this book? And it can be pure entertainment. That's fine. It can be funny. It can be anything, but you have to know what it is. And then you cannot say, I'm an aspiring writer. You have to write, and you have to write every day. Even if it's in your head while you're driving to work, you are writing every day, because otherwise that book will never happen. Never.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, for your inspiration, for your wisdom. I learned so much in this panel. So much from each of your conversations and your shared experiences, and from what I'm reading in the chat box, everyone is really grateful as well. Everyone's writing. Thank you so much for sharing great tips and food for thought in the process of writing. I look forward to continue this conversation in the near future. I just wanted to read a few messages to you all. Thank you for sharing your experiences, insights, and journey. Loved hearing about your books as well. You have all added inspiration for me. Enjoy the rest of your week. Yeah, so many folks, thank you for your valuable information. Folks are now looking at next steps for publishers. So your time here has been just so precious, and we're grateful for everything you have all shared. I'm gonna ask Tara now if there's anything you wanted to contribute before we close off this evening, Tara.
I'm coming back in. No, I just wanted to let everyone know, all of our attendees, that there will be there is a recording of this presentation. It will go out towards the end of this week or early next week. And in that follow-up, there will be we'll have something enabled that you can connect with any one of our authors, any one of our panelists.
And if anyone wants to purchase your books, I'm assuming through these
Absolutely.
contacts, they can go and purchase your books as well. So thank you all for your time, and thank you everyone who joined us from different parts of the world. We're grateful for Tara for organizing all of us. And Tara, should we close off?
Wait, before
We
you
are
do,
done, everyone.
before you do, I want to thank Liliana and Tara.
Yes.
Because you guys were great. This is a lot of work on your part.
Yeah.
And
Nicely done.
it
Thank
does,
you.
yeah,
Yes,
both
thank
of
you all.
both of you.
A big thank you to Liliana, because where she is, it's 6 hours ahead. So
Oh,
Oh, wow.
she's in Portugal.
But I love these I love these conversations and the wisdom. So
Yeah.
that's
so
CNR,
Liliana will
right?
come visit you. We'll come visit you in Portugal.
Please do, please do. I'm getting a
Alumni
little
events in
nostalgic.
Portugal. We're all up for that.
Yes.
I'll get my plane ticket tomorrow. Anyway,
Yes.
everyone,
Thank
have a
you
wonderful
all.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Okay,
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.